to give things like fizzy drinks. One drink that we banned totally in school, which it's now got better, was things like Sunny D. Capri Sun has changed it because they said that they've taken out the sugars. But these things that had high colorings and many other adjectives and things added, that made an impact on the child's ability to focus and to regulate their emotions. Now, that's another thing that we look at, regulating your emotions. Individuals with neurodiversity often perceive the world differently. So, a prime example, even as adults, you may have said, "Oh my goodness, this is a hot mess." They take that you may be directing that at them or whatever work they put in. This is terrible. It's horrible. I don't what it's rubbish, and they'll throw it away or they won't do it. They'll say, no, I'm not saying that you're a hot mess, but it's how they process it. Whereas you would have that conversation with someone else and they'll be like, it's a hot mess. Yeah, I know. I'm having one of those days, but I'm gonna, do whatever. Um, you're very hypersensitive. You have to be aware of the things that you're saying, not in a negative way, but if we're doing it in a Christ-like way, you should be aware of what you say anyway to people and how you speak to them and how you address them. But a prime example, I know one of our parents that they don't want to come to church anymore due to the fact that their child is a little bit louder, especially um after praise and worship, which they enjoy. But then when it comes to the prayer and to get quiet, they still want to sing. They don't recognize that singing is only in certain areas of the service. They want to sing all the time. People have said to them, "Oh, why can't you keep your child quiet? Why can't you take them outside?" That mother now, this child really, it's not a negative noise, it's not screaming, they're singing. But that child, that parent now feels that they're not welcome and that their child is not welcome. We shouldn't have that kind of an environment where people don't feel safe and that they don't feel comfortable in allowing their children to come and be with us. I see our dear Pastor Holford's on. I'm going to be quiet and let him jump back on. Pastor,
Okay.
you're on mute.
Hi, Pastor Bunny. Thank
Thank
you
you.
again.
Thank
Yes,
you.
you can go
I
ahead. Yeah, welcome.
I am so sorry that I saw something happening, but I wondered whether I'd gone offline. And I'm so pleased to be back again now. Thanks for calling me, Hannah. And please send a WhatsApp message if anything happens, okay? So we can keep in touch. And thank you, Anastasia, for continuing some of the helpful ideas so that the time wasn't wasted. Really appreciate that. And I'm going to go back to share. I'm going to skip a bit of what we were talking about. Um, did you hear the interview with Sarah before I left?
Oh, that's what cut off when you started. And
Okay,
yeah.
all right. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to share that. And yeah, Zara is my granddaughter. She did a presentation, but we'll skip on that. And and it's I wanted her as someone who is diagnosed, if that's the right word, with ADHD and autism, to give their perspective as to what some of the positive sides of being autistic are. So here is what she has to say. Hi, Zara. It's good that you come along, and thank you for experience of being autistic. What are some of the positive things about it?
I find that it really expands my mind and makes me have a really unique and interesting way of thinking. It means that in my analysis, I'm able to find different interesting points that other people might not have found because my mind kind of sees them differently. It means that I can be really, really interested in particular things and focus really well on them for ages. So I'm very passionate when it comes to things I enjoy. The ADHD means that I'm always very active, I'm very energetic, and I can always bring the energy to a room, even when most people are tired. Even if I'm tired, I've still got that energy. And I can hyper focus on things, which is great for me because I can hyper focus on the schoolwork because I find it interesting. Some people can't, but I think it's still cool that you can kind of have that like zoom in focus on things. Um, Being autistic is cool because it means that I can hyper empathize, which means that I can really feel what someone else is feeling, which is really lovely to kind of be able to comfort people or have a deep understanding of what they're feeling and be able to help them and make them feel understood. But it can also be hard sometimes because if the people around me are stressed or sad, then I can also feel the same way. And so I can be sad as well, but then we're just sad together, which is great. Um, so I think there is a lot of the things that people see as downsides can actually be upsides as well. It's just whichever way you look at it. It's the glass half full, glass half empty thing. But in my opinion, there isn't really a glass because I'm not really into glasses as much. It's more of a mug, maybe a pink mug, and like half of it, you can see it as half full or you can see it as half empty. Or you can just see it as you've got a mug and you've got something in it. And that's kind of, I feel like, how you see it when you're autistic. You have that, you have a brain that works, and you are like you're a physical human that was made by God, and everyone was made by God. And so I think that even if there are some times that are tricky, it's all just part of that beautiful experience that we're all just given. And I think one more thing to end with is that everyone's brains are unique. It's maybe meaning that your brain is slightly more different than some people, but everyone has very different brains and everyone is going to think differently and everyone can be problematic sometimes, but everyone also has these beautiful qualities that they've been given to by the Lord. And I think that if we choose to try and just focus on the beauty, then there is a lot of beauty in neurodivergence.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Spot on. Really appreciate that. And we'll come back to you later. Okay then. Bye
Bye
then.
bye.
Okay. I hope that you saw that some autistic people are not like Rain Man, and they have got a lot to contribute. I love Zara's positive attitude, and indeed, in the last 5, 10 years or so, there's been a tremendous growth in advocacy for autism and autistic people in the UK, and because there's a lot of people out there, there's a lot of misunderstandings about them, and so hopefully this seminar will give you a bit of a taste of yes, some of the challenges, but also some of the good things to look out for. Approximately 1% of adults in the UK are autistic, according to the NHS, which means that there's over 700,000 people. But a lot of those people won't have been diagnosed for one reason or another. ADHD is a lifelong condition. I think I want to say very quickly here that there's issues or questions as to what we've done wrong in order that our child has got ADHD. Did we give them the wrong food or whatever it may be? It's a wiring of the brain. And yes, there are things that can affect anxiety levels and so on, but we want to try and remove some of the blame game on this.
Oh,
It
hang on.
doesn't help. Thank you. The effects are, as Zara said, there can be problems with attention. As Anastasia said earlier, I was a daydreamer, and impulse. Uh, um, Doing things impulsively can be a problem. Our youngest son, Joel, is probably ADHD, and he's the one who's ended up with loads of broken bones from some of the accidents that he had. Um, so some of the challenges are difficulty in focusing, uh, almost anything can be a distraction. And for a classic ADHD person, they say, okay, we've got to go upstairs to get something from the bedroom, but on the way, they see other things, they get distracted, and they'll end up never getting there and doing all the other things on the way. And there can be extreme sleep issues. Sarah's had that. And the good news is that the NHS provide very good sleep clinics for people with sleeping issues to have their sleeping issues examined and potentially helped, as is in the case with Zara. There's high sensitivity, as was been pointing out. Some people are very sensitive acoustically. A few weeks ago, I was on holiday and I met this guy who had made a business out of setting up a company for audio presentations. And he's a sound engineer. And he used what he thinks is his ADHD, hypersensitivity to sound, to make a business out of it. So it's not all negative, although they will often need to have ear muffs or ear protectors in order to protect them from some of the sounds or the excessive sounds that they experience. And if you do start reading about ADHD, or particularly if you go onto social media, you'll see some reference to rejection sensitivity dysphoria, where those with ADHD feel that other people are attacking them or criticizing them. And they're sometimes called oversensitive people. The truth is that there isn't such a medical definition for RSD, and other ways of explaining it can be that they've probably experienced the trauma of being rejected as children for their differences, for their ADHD, for their autism, and particularly the effect of that trauma is to make them very sensitive to rejection now. Right, there's about 2.5 million people in England with ADHD. That's 3 to 4% of adults and possibly about 5% of children. And some of the common traits that they have are that autistic people like to have routine. My daughter needs to make sure the kids know exactly what they're having for a meal. So every week, the menu on each night is exactly the same, so that children know what's coming up and then are able to anticipate that and perhaps engage in the meal a little more easily. Sensory issues, as I pointed out, can be a problem, and social differences, and that they relate differently. They don't have the same sense of humor as other people have, and so can be marginalized from mainstream groups. And with ADHD, problem with focus as opposed to daydreaming, impulsivity, not working through the consequences, and this restlessness, whether it's to do with sleep or always on the go, it could be quite a challenge. But let's keep it positive. Some of the strengths of autistic people are that they can be very good at focusing on detail. And so if they are given an assignment and they enjoy it and they get into it, they can hyper-focus and they can really do excellent work as a result of that. And another characteristic is their honesty, by and large. And they will often come out with things that more mainstream people will have learned socially that you're not supposed to be that honest. And it's lovely being with my grandchildren, because they will tell you what's really going on, as they see it. ADHD, as Sarah pointed out, they're often very creative people and highly energetic, which is a great advantage. Is there an overlap? Can there be an overlap? Yes. If you answered this question 20 years ago and went to the top specialists in autism in the world, they would say, no, you can't overlap. But then they agreed that there were just too many cases where people did overlap. And since then, they say that they can co-occur, and they call that ADHD, and Zara's ADHD. However, it is not all neurodiverse people that have these overlap. Indeed, there's probably, it is a minority of people with autism that overlap with ADHD. And another area that both autistic and ADHD people experience is executive function challenges, where they find it difficult to plan, to work through, to do things in time, and to organize their lives. So we'll come back to that a bit more later. So there are plenty of myths about uh, autism out there, and ADHD for that matter. One of the big ones was that an early hypothesis that was put forward in the 60s and 70s is that autism was caused by bad parenting, particularly bad mothering. And so these parents would go around with this terrible guilt, knowing that they hadn't done anything wrong, but everyone just pointing the finger and saying the reason why your child is the way they are is because of your parenting. And that's still sometimes the case today. People point out in church to a child that is constantly fidgeting, oh, you give that child too many sweets and sugary drinks or whatever. No, ADHD and autism are neurological conditions. Yes, they can be affected to a degree by some of the foods and chemicals we take into the body, but primarily we need to make sure that we don't blame people for these conditions, because there's very little evidence to connect that. So some of the sensory differences that people have is to noise, to light, and to texture sensitivity. They will often, for the sake of noise issues, will need to have ear protectors for light. They often have to be in extreme dark in order to be able to sleep, for instance, or they're very sensitive to what most people call is normal light. They find dazzling, and so they sometimes need to have special glasses. And texture sensitivity. It, my grandchildren that are autistic or likely to be autistic, and trying to get them dressed is always a challenge. They never like putting their clothes on. Of course, of course they have to get dressed, but it's a bit of a challenge. Now, I said that I come back to executive function, which is the challenge for both groups of people, and that's planning ahead can be quite difficult. Organizing, how to go step by step through an event or something that they're planning on can be a challenge. And time management has never been my strength. I've always been over optimistic about how much I can achieve in a short time, although I'm not saying that I am autistic or ADHD, but I think I've got some of the characteristics, so I know what we're talking about. One of the big challenges for especially autistic children and adults, for that matter, is emotional regulation. There are strong emotions of anger, frustration, joy as well, but they need to be given support strategies to be able to help them manage those. Other things that are happening that will be useful. Let's go to this next page. The challenges that you will find. Let's just check we've got this right. Yeah, the challenges are numerous. At school, I'm really glad that schools are beginning to get hold of what to do to help and support children. But Leo, only 5-6 years ago, at the primary school he was at, really struggled. and in the end ended up with what's sometimes called autistic burnout, which meant that the experience of trying to go to school and pushing him, as the teacher said, to keep on trying, led to burnout. And he's been off school now for, what, 3 or 4 years. And the good news is that we're hoping we've got a place for him that's coming up soon. Work. Yes, the work environment can be incredibly challenging for both autistic and ADHD people. And and the good news is that there's now understanding that we should try, as I'll talk about later, to create, to work with the reasonable expectations of helping people who have those characteristics. And of course, the other big challenge is with social expectations. Um, so what we need to do is to come back to Zara, and I'd like her to explain what she thinks we can do to help people with some of these characteristics. Zara, welcome back again. And this time I'd like to ask you about the some of the challenges in a way that autistic and ADHD people have, in the sense that what do you wish that parents and carers and Sabbath school teachers and people who work with those with autism and ADHD, what you like them to know that might help them to do an even better job?
Well, I was really lucky. My parents have been amazing and they did a lot of research. I think that you need to try and do some research about it. If you have the time, just try and search around and figure out, kind of get a picture in your head of what it actually is, because there's so many stereotypes, but there's so many really great podcasts, audiobooks, real books, just quick news articles. You can even ask like AI at this point just to tell you a bit about it, because if you can understand them slightly more, even if you don't have the same brain as them, you can kind of empathize with their brain a bit more, put yourself in their shoes and try and imagine what each situation that they're struggling with would be like if you were them, because you're not them. So it is hard to understand that, and it's hard to accept some of reactions and things that could take place because of what they're feeling, but you have to try and think about that. So if, let's say, it was really loud in an area and there was lots of people and they suddenly got really frustrated or really anxious or nervous or maybe angry, depending on how people present being overwhelmed, imagine that you're them in their shoes and everything is so much louder than you can even imagine. Your eyes and brain are going to every single sound that you hear, every single thing that you see. Like, how would you react to that? And that usually for me helps to kind of validate what it actually is like, and then it helps you to react in a better way, because you've thought to yourself, oh, how would it actually feel to me if I was them? And ask them as well. Don't, like, there's never any too strange questions or too simple questions. Just asking someone like, what does it feel like to you right now? Because if you ask that, they're too overwhelmed to say, that's fine, but if they can kind of describe it to you and what it is like for them at that point, then that can really help you to know how to react. I think being calm, always being calm, because with the hyper empathy and all of that, it can very much be like, okay, this person now that's talking to me is getting stressed because I'm stressed already. It's going to make me even more stressed, and it's a never ending cycle. So you need to stay calm and stay kind of a pillar, um, because otherwise it can spiral really quickly. And I think also just remembering to give people space as well, because you don't want to feel, I personally don't like feeling like I am disadvantaged or like I need help. Sometimes you have to take into account the fact that people don't want to feel like they need help. because accepting help can be really hard sometimes. So giving it almost in a way that shows that maybe you're not really looks like you're giving it, but you're still supporting them in a way that helps them. And just also finding like community, because there's so many great communities of people who are going through the same thing with the same neurodivergent kids, and talking to people on there and finding out what they found helped and things like that can be a really nice thing. And also to know that you're not alone, because everyone, lots and lots and lots of people have gone through the same things. You just don't really know it, and sometimes you can feel slightly isolated, because it is hard. It's a journey, but it's a journey and you're going forward. And even if you don't find community, you've got God with you. You've got or just whatever thing you believe in, you have that with you as well. So you're never alone, and it's always just good to keep on trying your best, because your best is all you can give. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Sarah. That's been really positive and encouraging, and I'm sure that those who are working with those who are autistic and ADHD will find it very, very useful. Okay, bye for now then. Thank you. Bye. Okay. I hope you found that useful. There's plenty of examples of what Zara was talking about, and if we had more time, I could give more examples. But I realised that having been offline for quite a while, I'll just try to get through the rest of the PowerPoint and then give you an opportunity to ask questions. So what's very important for autistic people, and if you've got children around it, is to offer very clear communication. Something I'm having to learn about all the time. Don't try and break their routines. Allow those routines, because they're part of the security that prevents not only the degree of anxiety, but also the potential for meltdowns and so on, which it can be quite unpleasant. And offer the sensory adjustments that we talked about before. With people with ADHD, it's important to break the tasks down into bite-sized portions that they can manage. And then if they're having to sit down for a while to do an exercise, to do an activity, make sure that they can have what we could call a movement break. And that is an opportunity to stretch their legs and to let some of their energy go. I find that the way that we do church traditionally is an absolute disaster for ADHD children, because we're constantly telling them off when they're wriggling their legs or getting uncomfortable and needing to move around, or constantly wanting to go out to the toilet. And these are children with special needs, and we need to adjust our church services, I think, in order to be able to take care of those children, or else they just build up a resentment to church and they won't want to come back again. And offering reminders. They don't deliberately try to forget, but a lot of ADHD people find that they have issues with they're concerned about what's currently happening, and they will very easily forget what they've been asked to do. So they're not trying to be naughty. Now, this is perhaps one of the most controversial parts of the whole thing to do with ADHD, and that is that the issue of medication. And there are so many different stories out there that a lot of parents have become very wary of the idea of even having their child diagnosed with ADHD, because they may be prescribed medication, and there are negative stories about that medication. I'm personally someone who believes passionately in the health message, in the benefits of good diet and getting out to the sunshine and exercise and all the good things that we've been taught are God's gifts for us. And I was brought up by a mum who was very, very suspicious of doctors' medicines. However, I have done some research in this area, and realize that so often when people are resistant to the idea of medication, it's because they only are taking into consideration a small part of the picture. First of all, the medication, if it is given by a doctor properly, tends to be very, very safe. And there's research that's been going on for decades into this medication, and the research is pretty much universally positive. Um, However, uh, I I have a lot of sympathy for parents who are concerned about the over medicalization of what seems like a neurological condition. One of the things that we often don't think about when we're looking at the research and whether we should allow our children to get medicated is that if they're not medicated, that also has significant risks. For instance, as you know, ADHD children may be just 5% of the population. But when they did some research as to who gets admitted into hospital, they represent about 25% of the cases because they don't think about what they're doing. They are very accident prone. And, and that carries enormous risks. And if some appropriate medication can be given to help them to calm down a little bit, um, it can make a significant difference in their outcomes on many different levels. So so we do the research. Don't just read what it says on social media. Go to authoritative places, and to talk with people who have worked this through for themselves. Um, uh, what's very, very important is that we respect parents' decisions, and and but when decisions are informed by myths and prejudices, then I think we need to speak to that. And I hope I'm not treading on anyone's toes, but just inviting you to do the research yourself. Inclusive practice is a matter of no matter what somebody presents with, what is often characterized as bad behavior, naughty, cheekiness, whatever it is. We as those that are trying to care and to love and show God's love need to show God's patience. And and as Zara said, simply ask them, what helps? What could work for you? In educational work, we need to offer reasonable adjustments and flexible approaches if possible. The evidence out there is that there are serious mental health risks for people with ADHD and autism. They have a higher anxiety risk that they're having to often battle with on a regular basis, but there are ways of managing that. And so that's where the importance of support comes in, that it can help to reduce their anxiety. So what are the practical tools? And one practical thing that you can do is actually have a written out visual schedule of what is happening so that kids can go back and they can see the timetable and be reminded of what's happening. Or the checklist, the list of things they have to get ready to take to school, so they don't miss out and forget to take their PE kit or their lunchbox or whatever. Headphones can be very practical sometimes. Unfortunately, our UK medical system is overwhelmed by the number of cases of neurodiversity coming forward. And so there's rising demand for services with long waiting lists. And it seems like you're going round and round in circles sometimes. Unfortunately, there aren't many ways around that. So as we have introduced these areas and these issues, what does this mean for us as Seventh-day Adventist Christians? First of all, as Christians, we're trying to emulate, to follow what Christ would do, and to recognize that human beings are far more complex than than meets the eye. When Jesus interacted with people, he was very quick to pick up on their needs. And so I think we could say that people's behavior is complex. I could give lots of biblical illustrations of how Jesus responded to those situations. But what people need is understanding rather than punishment. So if you come from a culture that thinks that you can discipline a child, an ADHD child, into sitting still or whatever, what happens is that it can be terribly counterproductive. And to talk to the child, to talk to a friend if it's adult about their needs rather than trying to control them or make them like you want them to be is incredibly important. Many neurodiverse people are undetected, and this can be difficult for them and everyone caring for them because they are misunderstood. And so now that you've come along to this seminar, it may be that you're seeing some of these characteristics in some of the people you're working with, and that invites you to do more research so that you don't misunderstand. And I find that I'm having to constantly learn because as the grandchildren change and get older, I need to change the way that I behave towards them. And I'm always checking with my daughter, who's incredibly brilliant guide on this. You know, what else can I do to read, to understand, to change, and to connect? So we need to watch children and adults so they to see what they like and what they don't like, because sometimes they're often telling us, not necessarily through words, but through actions, what their preferences are. So be led by their needs and their preferences. Involve the parents and relatives and ask them what helps and what experiences they like and what they don't like. And some may like filling out a questionnaire to give you an idea of their preferences and needs. So those are just some of the responses that as a Christian, and with the grace of God, we look at people with compassion and we say their brains are wired differently. We're not trying to find fault or blame or even cure. We're simply saying, how can we support them effectively? So what can help at home and at church? The way we organize our Sabbath school rooms or our bedrooms or rooms in the house can make a big difference. Keep things simple, reduce the clutter if possible, create a sensory zone where they can be safe and they can calm down and they can relax, a chill out area. Try and avoid overstimulation, because that tends to exhaust a lot of people in this area. Be respectful, which looks very different for different people at different ages. But I was just talking to a mother today who was saying how rather than just telling off the child, yes, we need to give boundaries. Yes, we need to explain what is wrong, but let's do it in a constructive, respectful way. And adapt their program to what they can cope with. And if they can't cope with all day doing what you want them to do, well, even if they can do a little bit of it, that's a benefit. So one of the big things that parents I know and carers I know, they try to recognize when anxiety is being built up. And for some people, you can see that anxiety very quickly. You know, their arms are moving and they're getting agitated and jumping up and down. You know the anxiety is building. For other children, they don't necessarily show that, but there are little signs that you can sometimes tell. So, what are the key takeaways from today? Neurodiversity is natural. It's part of God's creation of our world. We need people, and our societies have always needed people who are neurodiverse. That's why it's there, to be a blessing. And let's focus on the strength-based approach to what we do. Ellen White said this about disability. She said, I saw that it is in the providence of God that the blind, the deaf, the lame, and the persons afflicted in a variety of ways have been placed into close Christian relationship to his church. It is to prove his people and develop their true character. Angels of God are watching to see how they treat these persons who need our sympathy, love, and disinterested benevolence. This is God's test of our character. If we have the true religion of the Bible, we shall feel that a debt of love, kindness, and interest is due to Christ in behalf of his brethren. We can do no less than to show our gratitude for his immeasurable love to us while we were sinners unworthy of his grace, by having a deep interest and unselfish love for those who are our brethren, who are less fortunate than ourselves. So that's some resources. The National Autistic Society and the ADHD UK website and society provide excellent resources. If I can just put in a caveat there, and that is that you'll find an awful lot of ideas out there on the internet, on TikTok and social media generally. And if something is associated with selling you something or getting you to do something that doesn't sound quite right, go back to these research-based organizations and and uh, and check the evidence for those particular proposals. So thank you very much, and it's now time for questions.
Hello,
Hello.
Sister Shirley Sorrento here.
Hi, Shirley.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the spiritual connection with autism. Some pastors, theologians believe that there's a spiritual aspect to it, and they even have prayers on YouTube and testimonies of people who got healed from autism. I think they're referring to the dumb spirit, where Jesus said, you know, the mute child.
Cast out demons.
Yes. Some people say there's a demonic aspect to it, some theologians here. In fact, there's a pastor called K.L. Blessing. He has a son who was autistic, and he couldn't speak, he couldn't do anything. He said he prayed and fasted, and the child is now playing music, and he's healed of autism. So maybe there's some truth in it, I'm not sure, I don't know.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. And that is a question I think a lot of Christians and Adventists have. And there are some, personally, I think there is a lot of danger in going down that route, partly because it raises hopes and creates fears. Hopes that a simple cure will solve the problem, and fears that there's something they've done wrong in their lives to allow the so-called devil into their lives and into the situation. And this is quite dangerous thinking, because most parents, when they go down those roads, will find that there is no cure. There may be some exceptional cases, such as the testimonies that you hear about, but I would prefer to spiritually support parents who are struggling with autism and ADHD, and definitely never talk to a child or an adult as if they are possessed by demons, because that can be so destructive to their spiritual health and welfare. So I'm not saying that there's never any case of spiritual issues, because we live in a world where the devil is alive and active. But I would really strongly discourage us from going down that road.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Pastor. There are a few questions in the chat at the moment, so I'll go to some of them in the chat. The first one, and I can see that Sister Anastasia answered it. It said the first one that came up was more about discipline. So they said, okay, where do you draw the line between diagnosis and actual bad behavior? It seems that every behavior now has a label.
Yeah, it's a very difficult one, especially for parents and those who are caring for children. And we have scriptural encouragement to raise our children to follow God and to, in a sense, to honor the presence of God in their lives by the way they act and behave. And that requires education. But there is and even discipline is sometimes is necessary in the best sense of the word. Discipline is discipling. You know what I mean by that? So just as we are disciples of Christ, we pass on that discipling process to our children, which is not about punishment. It's about encouragement primarily. And so I would encourage parents to say, yes, their child may be a daydreamer. They may be constantly fidgeting or whatever, finding it difficult to sit still, or many other conditions. They can sometimes learn how to modify that behavior, and girls will often be better at it than boys. But we must be extremely careful not to ignore their condition, and not deal with the issues, because society will make expectations of them. At the same time, we need to be compassionate and full of grace and treat them in a way that will help them in their personal journey with Christ to become a true disciple.
Thank you so much. One moment before you go, Victoria, there's one more question in the chat, and then we've got Deborah waiting. So
Good.
the next question is, we are all fearfully and wonderfully made by God. I always wonder why God allows ASD and ADHD conditions in the first place.
My perspective on this is that ADHD and autism have been around for a long time. And I'd like to imagine back in, wherever countries you come from, over the last centuries, what were some of the things that the gifts that those with ADHD would have brought to the community? So, for instance, in a secular setting, say the village was potentially going to be under attack, they needed night watchmen, and the ADHD people were some of the best people at being on guard because they didn't want to sleep. They were, and so we need those people in our society, and the way that we have. The way that we have connected and the way that we have loved each other has actually shown that these characteristics are needed. Indeed, some would say that Western society as we have it at the moment would not be the technical society we have if it wasn't for the autistic people who are out there. They're the ones who created the groundwork for the technological revolutions that we have today. And at the time, they were thought of being totally odd people, really weird, dressed in funny ways. They had terrible social habits, terrible eating habits, But they came up with brilliant technical systems that enabled the technology that we have today. And I encourage you to read up about, you know, how much we have needed ADHD and autistic characteristics in the past, that ability to hyper focus. And yes, there are serious downsides, and I don't believe that God, when he made us, intended us to be in a world of sin where we'll be experiencing these downsides. But I just want to, finish with a reminder that these people have often got gifts if we would only look for them and allow them to use their gifts for the blessing of everyone.
Amen. Thank you so much for that, Pastor. There's 3 more questions. I think it's actually 4. I'm so sorry, we won't be taking any more just because time has gone and we would like to finish maybe before 9. So if Deborah, you could come on with your question.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Pastor. I'm 53 and I've been diagnosed with bipolar for many years. And I'm just wondering, ADHD, does it overlap with bipolar? Because I'm due to have a psychiatrist review with my psychiatrist in sometime in May. And I've noticed that what you say is happening to me. Yes, and I'm just wondering how, instead of then being put in a sick role, how best can I approach her to say, can I be tested for ADHD? Because I feel like what you just mentioned, some of the things that I'm doing are it's as if I've got the ADHD, I'm on the ADHD spectrum.
Okay.
And I'm 53, so I don't know whether that plays a part as well. And also being a female, menopausal. So many things are happening all at once. But I just want to be able to find.
You've actually have knocked on that for ADHD, common coexisting conditions include disruptive behavior disorders such as oppositional defiant disorder, depression, bipolar disorder, anxiety, and learning disorders. So yes, this could be one of your coexisting. So whoever you're going to meet and speak to about your bipolar disorder, they'll be able to discuss this with you in more detail. And then maybe you will be able to come to a plan and start working towards where you can feel a lot more comfortable and safe in the space around you. So yes, there's always hope, praise God. Definitely look into that. Be as you're aware, try and if you don't feel comfortable, I always say to people and to parents as well, if you're not feeling as confident in that area, bring an advocate, someone who will speak for you. And as you know, Pastor Holford has said before, do your research. So there's information out there. And if you want to get in touch with me, I can always share that with you. So you can have a look and read for yourself, and then you can, with your advocate, or when you go to, you'll have your session, then you can discuss that in further details.
Oh, yes, I'd love if you could give me some information, please.
Okay.
Because I've been given, I've had bipolar since 2009, but they say that I've had it since childhood, teenage years.
Yeah.
But because it wasn't detected then, I've been, I've had incidences where I feel if it had been detected earlier, I wouldn't be involved in those incidences.
Yes, and that is, remember, that's one of the things that we shared, Pastor, as well, that it wasn't as recognized years ago for people. So usually if you were over 30, it wasn't actually it wasn't looked at in such a way. But now neurodiversity is very global, and there's so many, which is a blessing. People who share that they have the different disorders. So that makes you feel, you know, that, so because they want everyone to feel safe, to feel secure, and understand that it's not a label. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It's just, as you know, Pastor Holford's beautiful granddaughter said, your brain is wired differently, and it's actually makes you, as I say, more amazing. The amount of young people that just I've worked with, it's just brilliant. So yes, please get in
So how
contact
do
with
I get in touch with you then? What do I do? Leave my
just contact me at the SEC. Cornerstone can give it to you. I'll put my email in the chat. It's
yes,
aross
if you don't
at
mind.
ncsadventist.org.uk.
If you can put it in there.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Thank you so much for answering that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
We
And if I could just add to that a little bit, and that is that so many people are going to their doctors wanting diagnosis and for ADHD. The medical systems are just so overwhelmed and the waiting lists are so long. And in the meantime, there are other ways of finding out if you're likely to have ADHD. There's a whole lot of, some very good online tests and so on. Now, they don't prove that you've got it, okay? So you can't go around saying, I'm officially diagnosed. But once you recognize the patterns and you can then do the research to find out how you can work through the negative stereotypes that you developed over the years and develop positive approaches to your life in the future as someone with ADHD. And there's some great books I've read on this subject from by both men and women whose lives have been absolutely transformed once they realized their ADHD. That because they then start to realize, let's focus on the strengths and let's find ways of working with others to minimize the deficits.
Thank you, Pastor. We'll now move to D&D.
Yes, hi, good evening. My name is Denise. So basically my daughter, she's 15, and over the last, more from when she started secondary school, we noticed she started getting panic attacks and quite anxious about lots of different things. And she's done a little bit of research, I guess, herself, and has come and basically said that she feels that she's neurodiverse. When she sent me some of the information that she's researched, and I'm thinking, well, yeah, a lot of things it's manifested itself, and it's quite obvious. We've referred by the school for testing. Until they get a proper diagnosis, they're not not a lot of support has been really put in the school. So what I'm finding is that she, as a typical girl, she manifests typically as a girl, masks very well, very bright, overachiever, top in all her sets, but struggles socially. And but what my problem at the moment is, she comes in from school, and I guess because of the overstimulation and trying to mask all day, she's extremely exhausted and just wants to sleep. And she'll maybe start her homework, and she's very task focused, so she'll only want to focus on just doing her homework, sleep, maybe eat a little bit. But then it's the element of engaging with the rest of the family, helping do chores. I'm really struggling. I'm like, is it that she's just been selfish and not helpful? Is it just that I'm really struggling how to manage that? And I don't want to put any more pressure on her because she's year 10 now, but I also am struggling to get other things done. So yeah, just a little bit of advice, really.
Stacey?
Yeah, so from an educational standpoint, I want you to put yourself in the perspective of, you've been to work all day. How do you feel when you come home? So like, as Ira said, she wanted you to kind of put yourself into that. So remember, if you have been processing and processing, but it's overwhelming, when you come home, which should be your ultimate safe space, you need some downtime first. So when she comes home, she may often just revert straight to her room, do whatever. And it's because she's trying to just, and what should happen is she should be given that opportunity. Minimum 30 minutes of, you can let her know, you don't have to do anything. You come in, just relax, do whatever, whether you've got dinner ready, do something like this. And it's not always straight away, as sometimes as parents do. They'll go, oh, how was your day? How was school today? once you start with that, you've actually put them back into the hypersensitivity of now I'm trying to deal with, I've just had a day at school and now you've come home to ask me all these questions. It's too much information, it's information overload. You just need to allow her the opportunity to start to emotionally regulate so that then she processes that school is this area. And it may be stressful because it can be, especially if she's at 15, she's going to be doing GCSEs and she is doing that very well. But then also with her emotional and mental regulatory well-being, she needs to be able to just chill when she comes home. And that should be her calm zone. Remember, we said about making those safe spaces. So then once she has that opportunity, then, you know, you can allow her the time to come to you with whatever. And it isn't that, I tell you, another form that you hear a lot of people talking about is, oh, I'm an introvert. I'm an introvert. I'm an extrovert. That's the thing that's out now as well. A lot of people are talking about that. If you look at it as well as a person that's an introverted person really lives a lot in their head. Now that's me. I'm that type of person. So when I have to now speak or go and be amongst people and do whatever, when I come home, I really have to just debrief myself. Otherwise, I become very overwhelmed and I just have to withdraw because it becomes too much. And so this is the same thing for our young people. GCSEs, things like that. Remember, also you have to remember being in a school setting with all those people all around you. And then you have to keep functioning, go to this class, do whatever. Then you have to be able to come home to that safe pace. But as a mum, do not forget that you are her advocate. If you need to push, that's something I do talk to parents about, an educational healthcare plan, you can request it yourself. You can request it for her well-being from her medical perspective, from the doctors, or you can request it from the school, or if not, they can refer it onto CAMS or these different things. So you can request that, and you can request that it's looked at so that it can benefit for her educational health needs.
Okay, yes, thank you. Yes, because I've, as you said, like the advocacy role, I've been doing my best of that. She is, we've been in contact with CAMS. We're on a waiting list. We have been on a waiting list since 2023.
I know.
They initially said 18 months, obviously. Now we're almost 3 years on. I've kind of gone to the school and they've put one or two small things in place, at least from my perspective.
Right.
Not they're very apprehensive to put anything more in place because we haven't got a diagnosis. They won't accept a private diagnosis, so we're sort of just trying to manage as best as we can.
So you may need to reach out to me as well. I'll tell you how to go through that process, because depending on your daughter's school's local authority, you can actually tap into them and you can request, because she's also going through GCSEs and things, that her CAMS referral actually gets seen. And in actual fact, the fact that it's 3 years, that's actually breaking the rule itself. So they may have lost her in the system and you need to get her brought back to the front. Okay. And the school can also do that. The school Senko team should also be able to write for you what their notice is and then send that on to the local authority, which should also trigger the CAMS.
Okay. All right. Well, you'll definitely hear from myself. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
Amazing advice. Thank you, Sister Anastasia. I mean, if I could just add about how much do you want to involve them in the chores at home? And it really depends on the child and what the day has been like. They all have a limit to what they can cope with. And if you are going to demand that they do the washing up, clean the bedroom, whatever else it is, it adds a level of stress to an already very anxious child. And I encourage parents to do the opposite to the way I was raised. I was raised, everyone had to join in and do the work around the place. And if you didn't, it was a serious big issue. Is parents are taking a much more compassionate approach now. And what my daughter says, Zara's mother, is in effect, what's most important is getting them through the day as well as possible. And if it means that the room is a mess and my kitchen is disgusting, so be it. But if I can focus on them and their needs, they're only going to be with me for a few years. And I've got to do my best by the grace of God to support them in that. So it's very tough because other parents will totally disagree and be down on you for being too easy on one child or another. But you need, as a parent, to do what is right for you and your child.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Kim is waiting.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
I can.
Hi, I'm a mum with a child who has autism and another child in the home who has ADHD. Neither are diagnosed per se, but as parents, we can tell these things. Nevertheless, my question is, where can I go as a mother who can get exhausted by all of this? Honestly, it can get really exhausting as a parent having to deal with the energy, the ups, the downs. So, can you direct me for support for parents? And are there places where you can go with your child and, where you can just rest a little bit and have a break?
Do you want to yes, there are. First and foremost, it's all a very key factor is the local authority that you're in. Each local authority works differently in this area, and then you have support from Children's and Families team in social services. Not to say that there's anything wrong with you or whatever, but everyone recognizes that parenting, there's no handbook, so you need we all need support. And there are external groups that will be made from charities like the Autism, ADHD, the charities and things that Pastor Holford shared, as well as if your local authority will have under the Children's and Families Department areas that will do that. Now, there are also something that I'm looking to do next year, and I wish you had have come to the Possibility Ministries weekend because we had the support so that parents could be there while their children were taken care of, and we had our own sensory room. But in saying that, there's different they're not called, well, they're not holiday homes, what are they called? They're different like a butlins, but different, but they cater for parents with children where they have trained workers in this area so that you can still have a break and then your children can also be taken care of. So
Okay.
while you're there, so like it's not like a center parks, but something like that. So I can find that information out and send it to you.
Oh, yes, that would be
And so
amazing.
that way, those I know many parents from my Senko parents, they would then take their holidays in those places. So whether it's half term or whatever, they would go to those places. So that then they know that them and their children are supported. And also you don't feel indifferent. No one's looking at you
Yeah.
differently because all of us understand. And it's good to you will actually gain a good positive friendships with parents that recognize and can relate, and you can share ideas, and it's just a really good positive space.
Okay. That would be great. I've seen your email. I can email you and just maybe get all that information later.
No problem. But that's what we're here for. We're here for you. And Edith is about to jump in as well, so she's got a lot more information.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Edith, please. You're mute.
You're muted.
Thank you. Actually, Anna, you've said quite a lot of the things I wanted to say. I just wanted to plug in to say your local authority generally, if you haven't had a care assessment, it's a very good idea to get one. You can request it. It's within your rights. Every parent who's caring, whether unofficially or officially, should get, or any person really who's in the care role, should get some support, do a care assessment. And they do give respite hours. Well, in the borough that I'm in, they will give certain number of hours a week for respite where there's a need. Now, I do recognize that you say that there hasn't been a formal diagnosis for your children, so that might be a challenge. However, you are still entitled to a care assessment. In terms of, the Care Act, you are entitled to getting one. So I would reach out as soon as you can to your local authority and ask them for one. That's the starting point. And then sometimes they might help you to be, they might move things in order for your children to have a formal diagnosis. And I wanted to say, adding to, the long waiting list and what's going on in the country recently, but it depends on where you are. So I have, because I work in the industry, seen quite a number of vacancies where certain areas are trying to fix the waiting list and the backlog of ADHD and autism assessments. So I know one recently, I think this was in Hertfordshire, where they were looking for someone to do like 200 assessments in a month, that sort of thing, because there is a big backlog, but there is a push from the government where they're saying, it's unacceptable for children, particularly, to be waiting for such a long time. And of course, we do know there are people who are adults who are seeing that there's a need for that as well. So depending on where you are, you might be able to get an accelerated, you might be in a program, or you could get into a program where they are doing like the waiting lists. And what I always say as well is pushing is very helpful in, of course, a diplomatic manner, because where some of these things are concerned, he that cries the loudest sometimes gets the most. And so if you don't look for help, and if you don't speak out and say, I need this for my family, and we don't want tragic situations like we've had in the past, where because there's carer breakdown, mental health wise, the family and the children are then put at risk. So that's very, 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 very important, and there will always be some help out there, whatever form, respite for a few hours. But you definitely don't want to risk your mental health and the physical health, and maybe even mental health of your family and your children.
Thank you so much, Edith. We've got Victoria. I think Victoria's the last question. And
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I just quickly want to say that anyone wanting to do research pertaining to anything to do with the mind and that, the Adventist Dr. Neil Nedley is a good one to look at. Yes, it's a good one to look at. I was looking at a program lately. Before diagnosis is made, apparently, I'm not sure which, but something to do with the mind. Because before diagnoses are made on children, the lady doctor or the doctor will request that the child is taken off screen time for around 6 weeks before he will make a diagnosis. So there are certain things we can do to help the children's development. Neil Nedley is one of the research to do. It's online, presentations plenty, it's online. How to even get better with these things. Thank you.
thank you so much. There was a question at the beginning about is it being recorded? Yes, it is being live streamed. So if you do want to catch the live stream, it'll be on SCC Media. The beginning was missed, but halfway through you'll get the rest of the recordings. I'll now hand you over to Edith, who will give us the closing remarks.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Pastor Bernie, for a very informative and I would say a personal presentation. Thank you for inviting your granddaughter to be part of this as well. I think that's always important to hear the stories and to see someone who's actually experiencing the challenges that we were talking about today. And I just wanted to thank everyone who has attended this evening and for your attention, for the very good questions as well. And just want to encourage every one of us to be part of the caring community. Something very pivotal that was, I think, shared today was the fact that our spaces really need to be welcoming and also make reasonable adjustments for us to have everybody fellowship with us. You know, we've spent a lot of time talking about people with who are hard of hearing. We've done some work around that area in the church, and as I hope visually impaired people as well. But this is probably an area where we need greater attention because of the fact that we are not always, this is a hidden, these can be hidden, as we say, handicaps or disabilities. And so we need to be more sensitive to what is going on with each other, to families, to children, and even adults who might not seem quite like us, act quite like us, but don't have a visible physical disability or handicap. That's really, really important. I was just reading off some statistics from a health perspective, looking at our communities that have autism. Did you know that people with autism are the most likely to have lower mortality? They live a much shorter time than the average person. They're more likely to also have dementia and to suffer other physical health and challenges because of maybe not being able to communicate what's going on with them. But these inequalities and inequities in our health system, as far as the outcomes for people who might be neurodivergent, these are things that we can support with. And so I just want to encourage, if you're here, and I know some of our health ministries leaders are here, or even just our church community, when we are doing programs, when we are working on projects and doing different things that are, we want to be as inclusive as possible. We want to take into consideration whether you are doing a cooking class or you are doing an exercise program, like we've been having the walking challenge. We want to take everyone along with us. We don't want anyone to be left behind in as far as the programming and the events that we are doing, but also most importantly, we don't want anyone to be lagging behind as far as their health outcomes and their longevity, mortality is concerned. We want everyone to live as long as God intended them to live. The Bible says, as your days, so shall your strength be. So everyone in our community deserves to live as long as God intends them to live, and to do so with health, as God says He wants all of us to prosper and be in good health. So I want to just encourage us as we do what we do in all the programs, health ministries or otherwise, to always remember as much as possible to include and to consider how each of those programs accommodates and meets everyone else's needs.
Thank you so much, Edith. Pastor, can we end with a word of prayer, please?
Our Father in heaven, we thank you for making us all so different. We thank you for the gifts of the difference. We thank you that tonight we can hear from such experienced people who have brought such a range of understandings that have helped us in our growing understanding of neurodiversity and particularly autism and ADHD. I want to pray particularly for those who have family members that they are caring for at the moment. You know how they are struggling, how exhausting it is at times to raise just a, quote, normal child, but to have a child with these special characteristics can be so, so difficult. I pray that you would give these parents and carers a massive amount of affirmation of your love for them in their lives, that you would give them the patience and the strength and the wisdom they need for the superhuman task that they have. may our church extend its support in more practical ways to those that are in need. And may this seminar be just a small introduction to the whole sense that our church needs to grow together to support each other with the challenges that we face. So, as we conclude our time tonight, we do so with grateful hearts, thanking you that you've always given us the strength to manage, to cope, but more than that, to thrive and to flourish. And as we help our neurodiverse members of our congregation, our children, to indeed become advocates and encouragers of others, that you would bless them, bless us. And as a church, may we reflect your kingdom of diversity and love and grace for everyone. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night. Thanks, Bernie. Take care.
Good night. Bye. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you, Sister Shirley, for reminding me it was on. See you.
Yes. Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Yes. Pastor
Okay.
Bernie,
Yep.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yep.
You remember me? I used to be in
Yes, but
Sheffield.
the live streaming.
Shirley in Sheffield. Oh,
I used to,
wow.
I used to live in Sheffield. I used to work in mental health.
Wow. Thank you so much for coming
You used to be
tonight.
in Sheffield. You were pastor in Sheffield.
I wasn't a pastor in Sheffield, but my daughter lives in Sheffield. And so we come and visit there very often.
Oh, I thought years ago you were my pastor. Where was this? Yeah, you were my pastor years ago. Were you in Oxford?
No, I was in Luton and Hempstead, Ipswich, Colchester, Portsmouth. Anyway, thanks for
Yeah.
joining us tonight, and thanks for your question.
Yes. I want to get in touch with you about something.
Sure. Okay.
Project I had in mind for
Okay.
neurodivergent. My granddaughter is autistic.
Okay.
Yeah, and also something happened years ago.
Okay.
But I would
Sister,
have to either phone
I
you
don't know who's
or
live streaming. You can stop live streaming. They won't night.
Okay.
yeah.